The Bridge of Unanswered Letters. Fear of Rejection. What if the fear of rejection is not really the fear of hearing the word no? What if it is something much older than that? Something quieter, something deeper? Because most people believe rejection begins in a moment, a text unanswered, a date that never happens, a relationship that ends, a person who chooses someone else. But perhaps those moments are not where rejection begins. Perhaps rejection begins much earlier, in the stories we tell ourselves about what those moments mean. Because there are people who survive heartbreak and somehow become more open, and there are people who survive heartbreak and slowly begin building walls, not because they want to, not because they choose to, but because somewhere inside, a frightened part of them begins whispering, "Be careful. Don't risk too much. Don't hope too much. Don't let anyone matter." And little by little, the heart begins protecting itself from pain. Yet in protecting itself from pain, it often protects itself from love as well. This is a story about two people, a woman and a man. Neither knew the other existed, yet both were carrying the same invisible burdens. The fear that opening their heart again might end the same way it had before. And this is a story of what happened when they finally discovered something important. The thing they feared the most was never rejection at all. There was once a woman named Elena, and there was once a man named Jonah. They lived in different places, walked different streets, lived entirely separate lives. Yet each evening, as the world settled into darkness, both carried the same private loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of wanting connection while being afraid of it at the same time. Years earlier, Elena had loved deeply, the kind of love that changes how a person sees the future, the kind of love that makes ordinary mornings feel sacred, the kind of love that causes someone to believe perhaps they have finally found home. And when that relationship ended, the grief was larger than she expected. Not because she could not survive it. She did. Not because she could not move forward. She did. But because something inside her quietly changed. Before that relationship, meeting people felt exciting. Afterward, it felt dangerous. Every new conversation carried invisible questions. What if they leave too? What if they lose interest? What if I'm not enough? What if I care more than they do? And because those questions felt uncomfortable, she stopped noticing them consciously. Yet they remained beneath the surface, influencing everything. The way she replied to messages, the way she hesitated before saying yes to dates, the way she sometimes pulled away whenever someone seemed interested. Not because she didn't want love, because she did, very much, but because wanting love and feeling safe enough to receive it are not always the same thing. Jonah carried something similar, though it looked different. Years earlier, someone he had loved had chosen another path. The breakup itself was painful, yet what remained afterward was worse. The doubt, the endless questioning, the replaying of memories, the wondering, what was wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I chosen? And over time, the questions became assumptions. Assumptions became beliefs. Beliefs became habits. And habits became identity, without realizing it. He began entering every romantic possibility, expecting disappointment. Not consciously, just quietly. Like a person expecting rain. He smiled, he joked, he appeared confident. Yet underneath, there was always tension, always preparation, always the expectation that eventually someone would discover something unlovable about him and leave. Years passed. Both remained open enough to hope, yet guarded enough to avoid risk. An exhausting combination. Because hope says move forward, fear says stay back. And living between those two voices can become very tiring. One evening, Elena found herself walking through an old part of town. She wasn't looking for anything, just trying to clear her mind. The streets were quiet, the air cool, the sky painted with faded shades of gold. Eventually she arrived at a place she had never noticed before, an old stone bridge. Beneath it flowed a gentle river. Along the bridge stood hundreds of small wooden boxes. Curious, she approached one. Inside was a folded letter, then another, and another. Each box contained letters, unsent letters, unanswered letters. Letters never delivered, messages never spoken, confessions never shared, apologies never offered, dreams never expressed. At the end of the entrance stood a small sign. It read, "This bridge exists for all the words people were afraid to send." Elena stood quietly, reading, thinking, feeling something stir inside. Several weeks later, on an entirely different day, Jonah arrived at the same bridge. He had been driving without destination, trying to escape a restless feeling, and somehow he found himself there. Drawn by curiosity, he began opening boxes, reading fragments. Some were heartbreaking, some hopeful, some beautiful. Yet one realization appeared again and again. Almost every letter had something in common. Not rejection, fear of rejection. Not actual loss, fear of loss. Not actual abandonment, fear of abandonment. Again and again, people had remained silent, not because something terrible happened, but because they were trying to prevent something terrible from happening. And in doing so, many had prevented something beautiful from happening too. Days later, the caretaker of the bridge appeared, an elderly woman with kind eyes. She seemed to notice things people rarely said out loud. She spoke separately with Elena and Jonah, though her words were nearly identical. She asked a simple question. "What exactly are you protecting?" Both immediately answered, "My heart." The caretaker smiled gently. "Are you?" The question lingered. She led him separately to the center of the bridge. There she pointed toward the river below. "What happens when a boat never leaves the shore?" "It stays safe." "Does it?" The caretaker shook her head. "No storms, no waves, no danger, but no journey either. No discoveries, no destination, no sunsets beyond the horizon." Then she said something neither would forget. "Many people think courage means eliminating fear. It doesn't. Courage means deciding something matters more." That night, both found themselves reflecting on relationships that had ended. Not the pain, the meaning they had attached to the pain. Because perhaps rejection had never actually said, "You are unworthy." Perhaps rejection had only ever said, "The connection wasn't right." Perhaps rejection had never been evidence of inadequacy. Perhaps it was information, direction, redirection. Nothing more, nothing less. As weeks passed, something began changing, not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. Elena started allowing conversations to unfold naturally. Instead of analyzing every message, instead of predicting outcomes, instead of protecting herself from hypothetical futures, she became more present, more curious, more alive. And to her surprise, the freedom felt wonderful. Not because every interaction worked out, some didn't, but because she was no longer measuring her worth through outcomes. Jonah experienced something similar. For years, every romantic possibility had felt like a test, a verdict, a judgment. Now he began viewing it differently, not as evaluation, but exploration. Not, will they choose me, but are we compatible? Not, am I enough, but do we fit? And with that shift, something remarkable happened. The pressure disappeared. The fear loosened. The future stopped feeling like a courtroom and started feeling like an adventure. Months later, both returned to the bridge separately, unaware of each other. The caretaker greeted them normally, then handed them each a blank sheet of paper. "Write one thing," she said. "Just one." They sat quietly, thinking, reflecting, feeling. Eventually, Elena wrote, "I no longer need certainty before I allow myself to hope." Jonah wrote, "Rejection cannot determine my value because value was never being measured." The caretaker smiled, placed both letters into empty boxes, and said softly, "Now you're ready." Ready, not because fear was gone. Ready because fear no longer made decisions. Ready because they understood something most people spend years learning. Love has never belonged to the fearless. Love belongs to those willing to be valuable, those willing to risk uncertainty, those willing to be seen, those willing to hear yes, and those willing to survive no. Because every meaningful connection requires the same thing, an open heart, not a guaranteed outcome. And perhaps, as you are listening to this story, you may begin noticing something too. The fear of rejection often promises protection, yet what it truly offers is elimination, while vulnerability offers possibility, and possibility has always been where love lives. Because the greatest relationships are not built by people who never risk rejection. They are built by people who discover their worth remains untouched, whether someone stays or goes. And once a person truly understands that, the bridge between fear and love becomes much easier to cross. One step, one conversation, one moment of courage at a time. And now, perhaps there's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to figure out. Because for the next little while, you can simply allow yourself to listen and notice and experience in whatever way feels more natural for you. And perhaps, as your attention begins turning inward, you may notice the gentle rhythm of your breathing. the way each breath arrives on its own, without effort, without instruction, without needing to be controlled. Breathing in and breathing out. And perhaps it is interesting how many things in life work best when they are allowed, not forced, not chased, not controlled, allowed. Much like healing, much like trust, much like love. And perhaps, as you listen, you can imagine yourself standing once again at the entrance of that old bridge, the bridge from the story, the bridge of unanswered letters. Only this time, something feels different. The sky above is soft and clear. The air feels calm, and the river below moves steadily, patiently, as though it has been flowing for thousands of years, as though it understands something important, something simple, something true. The river never demands that the water ahead be visible. It simply flows, trusting each bend, trusting each curve, trusting each turn. And perhaps some part of you already understands that wisdom, because there was never a time in your life, before disappointment, before heartbreak, before fear, before doubt, when you trusted life more naturally, when you trusted yourself more naturally, when hope arrived steadily. And while that version of you may seem distant, perhaps it never disappeared. Perhaps it simply became hidden beneath experiences, protected beneath caution, waiting patiently for the moment it can emerge again. And perhaps that moment can begin now. As you step onto the bridge, notice the texture beneath your feet. Solid, strong, steady, supporting you completely. And with every step forward, you may imagine releasing something unnecessary, not forcing it away, not fighting it, simply allowing it to become lighter. The first step, and perhaps you release the need to project every outcome, because projection never truly guaranteed safety. It has only created exhaustion. The mind trying endlessly to see around corners, trying endlessly to prevent discomfort, trying endlessly to protect. And perhaps you can thank that part of yourself, because it was trying to help. It truly was. Yet perhaps now it can rest just for a while, because you are safe here, safe in this moment, safe on this bridge, safe inside yourself. And as you continue walking, you may notice hundreds of letters surrounding you, thousands perhaps, each one representing a fear, a worry, a concern, a story. And as you move among them, you begin realizing something curious. Most of the letters were never opened. Most of the fears never happened. Most of the worries never became reality. most of the imagined catastrophes existed only inside anticipation, only inside prediction, only inside imagination. And perhaps you begin smiling gently because the mind can be so convincing, so persuasive, so certain, and yet so often wrong. Ahead, you notice another bridge, a smaller one that crosses directly over the river. And engraved above it are 4 simple words: what if it works? And perhaps those words feel unfamiliar because fear tends to ask different questions. What if they reject me? What if they leave? What if I get hurt? What if I'm disappointed? Fear asks those questions repeatedly, again and again, year after year. Yet now, for the first time, you notice another possibility. What if it works? What if someone appreciates exactly who you are? What if your kindness is enough? What if your authenticity is attractive? What if your heart is not too much? What if your sensitivity is beautiful? What if your vulnerability creates connection? What if your uniqueness is exactly what someone is searching for? What if love is easier than fear has convinced you? And perhaps, as those questions drift through your awareness, your unconscious mind begins considering possibilities it may have overlooked. Possibilities hidden behind old assumptions, old beliefs, old conclusions. Continuing forward, you arrive at the center of the bridge, and there, waiting quietly, is another version of yourself. Not younger, not older, simply freer. The version of you that no longer measures worth through acceptance. The version of you that no longer confuses compatibility with value. The version of you that understands rejection differently. And as you approach, you notice something surprising. This future self appears peaceful, confident, relaxed. Not because every relationship worked, not because life was perfect, not because disappointment never happened, but because they discovered something important, something life-changing, something liberating. They discovered that rejection never defined them, not once, not ever. And perhaps this future self smiles warmly, as though they have been waiting for you to arrive, waiting for you to remember. And perhaps they place a hand gently over their heart, then point towards yours, as though reminding you that everything you seek already exists within you. Love, worth, belonging, connection, acceptance. These are not things another person gives you. They are things another person helps you experience. But they originate here, inside, where they have always lived. And perhaps, as you stand with this future self, you begin noticing a beautiful golden light, soft, warm, comforting, radiating from the center of your chest. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, gentle, steady, like sunlight through a window. And this light represents something important: your inherent worth, the worth that existed before your first heartbreak, before your first disappointment, before your first rejection, before anyone's opinion, before anyone's judgment, before anyone's choice. Worth that never needed to be earned. Worth that never disappeared. Worth that has remained untouched beneath every experience. And perhaps, as this golden light expands, you begin understanding something differently and deeply. A person's decision to stay cannot increase your worth. A person's decision to leave cannot decrease it, because worth is not created by relationships. Relationships simply reveal the worth that was already there. And now, imagine that this golden light begins flowing through every part of you, through your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your stomach, your hips, your legs, your feet, every cell, every breath, every thought, every memory. And perhaps it begins gently dissolving old fears, not because those fears were wrong, but because they are no longer needed. The fear of not being enough, dissolving. The fear of abandonment, dissolving. The fear of rejection, softening, loosening, releasing. And in their place, something new begins growing. Trust, self-respect, curiosity, openness, confidence. Not confidence that someone would choose you, confidence that you will be okay either way. And that kind of confidence is incredibly powerful. Because imagining entering into a future relationship from that place, not seeking validation, not seeking proof, not seeking rescue, simply sharing, exploring, connecting, discovering, allowing people to reveal who they are, allowing yourself to reveal who you are, without needing perfection, without needing guarantees, without needing certainty, because certainty was never the requirement for love. Presence is, authenticity is, courage is. And perhaps now you notice the bridge beginning to fade, the river becoming distant, the sky growing softer, and you realize you are bringing something back with you, a knowing, a remembering, a truth, that your heart was never broken beyond repair, only protected. And perhaps it no longer needs quite so much protection. Perhaps it can begin opening again, little by little, moment by moment, conversation by conversation. Not because there are no guarantees, but because there never were. And life continued unfolding beautifully anyway. And perhaps as you return fully to this moment, you can carry this understanding with you, that you are not here to avoid rejection. You are here to experience connection. You are not here to earn worthiness. You are here to remember it, You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to participate fully in life. And perhaps the next time fear appears, you will recognize it, thank it, smile gently, and continue forward anyway. Because beyond fear, beyond uncertainty, beyond old stories, there has always been a bridge. And now, you know how to cross it.
I built my home behind locked doors, hung old heartaches on the walls. Every goodbye became a warning, every silence grew so tall. I learned to read the empty spaces like they carried all the truth, but all they ever really whispered was the fear I handed to them. So I folded up tomorrow before it had a chance to bloom. I called it being careful, but I was only hiding from the wound. Maybe love was never asking for a promise it won't break. Maybe all it ever wanted was a heart awake. Every bridge is built for crossing, not for standing still alone. If I lose what's never mine, I still won't lose my soul. So I'll walk into the unknown with these scars beneath my skin. Because rejection never measured me, it only showed where love had never been. Somewhere there's another dreamer, holding hope with trembling hands, wondering if they're too broken, wondering who will understand. They don't know I'm searching too, carrying the same disguise. Two hearts learning at a distance how to finally open wide. Every unanswered letter still believed in something more, not because it found an ending, but because it dared to hope before. Maybe love was never asking for perfection from the start. Maybe all it ever needed was an honest heart. Every bridge is built for crossing, every road invites a chance. Every no becomes a turning toward a better circumstance. So I'll meet tomorrow smiling, leave my armor in the wind. Because rejection never defined me, it only closed a door I didn't fit within. I'm not waiting for certainty anymore. I'm waiting for connection. I'm not asking, will they stay forever? I'm asking, can we be ourselves together? And if the answer comes as silence, I'll still be whole. If the answer comes as goodbye, I'll still be home. Now the bridge is shining softly under skies I've never known. Every step becomes a heartbeat, leading farther from alone. I don't need the world to choose me, I was worthy from the start. Love belongs to those courageous enough to hand another their heart. So if tomorrow brings another chance, I'll meet it with unanswered letter. Let me hear somehow the bridge was never waiting for someone else. It was waiting for me, for me.
So here are the key meanings of the story. Number 1, rejection is not the same as unworthiness. One of the deepest messages in the story is that rejection is often interpreted as evidence that something is wrong with us. Yet rejection rarely means a person is unlovable, inadequate, or flawed. More often, it simply means two people were not aligned in that moment. The story teaches that worth is instruction and cannot be increased by acceptance or decreased by rejection. Number 2, fear of rejection is often more painful than rejection itself. Many people spend years avoiding situations where rejection might occur. The anticipation becomes a prison. The story reveals that most suffering comes not from actual rejection, but from the endless mental rehearsal of it. The fear becomes larger than the event itself. Number 3, protection can become a cage. The walls people build around heartbreak are usually created with good intentions. They are attempts to prevent future pain. Yet the story shows that the same walls that keep hurt out also keep love out. Protection is useful until it becomes preventing life itself. Number 4, vulnerability is the price of connection. Love has never belonged exclusively to people who are fearless. It belongs to people willing to feel uncertainty. The bridge symbolizes the journey every person must take when opening their heart again. The story teaches that meaningful connection requires emotional risk. Number 5, the mind often predicts danger that never arrives. The bridge is filled with unanswered letters, represents fears, worries, and imagined outcomes. Many of those fears never become reality. The story reminds us that the mind is often trying to keep us safe by imagining worst-case scenarios, yet imagination is not prophecy. Number 6, heartbreak creates stories, not just pain. The actual heartbreak is often temporary. The story created afterward can last for years. I wasn't enough. I always get abandoned. No one stays. These stories become unconscious beliefs. The story teaches that healing often requires changing the meaning attached to the past experiences. Number 7, courage is not the absence of fear. The caretaker's wisdom highlights a central truth. Courage does not mean becoming fearless. Courage means moving forward even when fear is present. The goal is not eliminating fear. The goal is preventing fear from making decisions. Number 8, dating is exploration, not evaluation. Jonah's transformation reveals a powerful shift. Many people approach dating as if they are being judged, as if every interaction is a test of their worth. The healthier perspective is curiosity, not will they choose me, but are we compatible? This removes pressure and creates freedom. Number 9, hope requires letting go of certainty. One of Elena's realizations is, I no longer need certainty before I allow myself hope. This captures the central truth about life and relationships. There are no guarantees. Waiting for certainty before opening your heart means waiting forever. Love requires stepping forward without knowing exactly what comes next. And number 10, the real relationship is the one with yourself. The future self on the top of the bridge symbolizes self-acceptance. The story ultimately teaches that healthy love belongs long before another person arrives. When someone knows their value, independent of outcomes, Relationships become opportunities rather than necessities. Instead of seeking someone to complete them, they share their life from a place of wholeness. And from that place, rejection may still disappoint, but it no longer destroys, because they know something that fear has forgotten. They were worthy before the relationship. They are worthy during the relationship. And they remain worthy afterwards. And perhaps tonight, as you leave the story behind, you may find yourself wondering about something. Not whether someone will choose you, not whether the next relationship will work, not whether every risk will be rewarded, but something much simpler. What becomes possible when you stop asking, what if they reject me? And begin asking, what if I finally stop rejecting myself? Because perhaps the bridge you have been trying to cross was never really between you and another person. Perhaps it was always a bridge between fear and trust, between old wounds and new possibilities, between protecting your heart and allowing it to live again. And maybe the next time someone catches your attention, the next time a conversation sparks curiosity, the next time your heart whispers, maybe, you will remember the bridge. You will remember the river. You will remember the letters that were never sent. And you may discover that courage is not taking a step because you know what will happen. Courage is taking a step because you know who you are. A person worthy of love. A person worthy of connection. A person worthy of being seen exactly as you are. And if this story spoke something inside to you, if it helped you remember a truth your heart has been waiting to hear, be sure to subscribe and return for more journeys into the mind, the heart, and the stories that quietly transform us. And if there is a challenge you're facing, a fear you're ready to release, or a chapter of life you'd like to explore through a personalized hypnotic story created just for you, you can reach out at rhondashypnoticstories@gmail.com. Until next time, may you trust yourself a little more, may you fear rejection a little less, and may you remember the people meant to walk beside you are not looking for perfection. They are looking for someone brave enough to cross the bridge.